Recording. Okay, I just started
Awesome.
the recording of it.
Thanks.
All right. So just to give you a little bit of a background of how our system is set up and works. Currently, you have the cloud out here where the SKUBANA cloud is, and you have a bunch of workstation in the office that access the cloud via the internet. And so you get something that looks like this, right? You got a dashboard, and in the dashboard you can look at your inventory and your orders, et cetera, et cetera. So we have a dashboard set up that has some demo products in it that we'll refer to here in a minute, but it's similar to that. So yours is very similar to that, I'm sure. So what we do is, because we have we're on site, we have to have a physical presence in the warehouse in order to be able to pick, pack, and ship and that kind of thing. So what we do is, depending on the size of the warehouse, we will sell the number of access points sufficient to saturate the square footage of the warehouse, anywhere from 5,000 to, we have customers that are 50,000 and larger. And obviously, with something that size, you need additional access points sufficient to cover it. I'm got about 20 years of experience in this, and so I do a virtual site survey. If you send me a diagram of your warehouse, I can typically guesstimate how many are there, and then you can always add additional access points as you need to. The idea is that you get all of your warehouse sufficient so where the radio frequency, the RF signal, is strong enough that the mobile handhelds can communicate, and then what happens is we also we present a physical server called the RF server, which does several things. It runs an instance of Internet IIS. It runs it commands the remote controls the handhelds, and then it accumulates local data, move adds and changes, that kind of thing, and stores them in a database. And it's also where you configure our system by adding employees and running reports and that kind of thing. So the physical presence that we have are the RF server and the access points, and the access points tie into your Ethernet backbone. And then the scanners talk through the access point to the RF server, which in turn talks to the SKUBANA cloud. And then it comes back to the RF server. And so we buffer some things in the RF server that make the handhelds able to move on when at other times they would be stymied by the latency of the internet, for example, or lack of response and that kind of thing. So that's how our system is designed to work. Because we have a physical presence, as I said earlier, we can measure productivity statistics of the employees. If you have multiple pickers, we can tell you how many items they picked, how many orders they picked, how fast they were, and you can compare those statistics to other pickers, for example, to find out how productive one employee is compared to the other employees that you have out on the warehouse floor picking orders, or verifying orders if that's what you want to do. And it's also allows us to record move adds and changes, any move adds or change that is done, so that you can see those. So that's kind of how the system works. The scanners that we sell, we're a dealer for Datalogic. The scanners you see here on the right are Datalogic products. They're a company out of Europe. They make a very good product. We can sell brand new handhelds that have a year warranty on them. We do have a few reconditioned ones in stock that are available at a lower price. And then on the left is a Motorola, used to be Symbol, now Motorola bought them, and now Zebra bought that division from Motorola. So now they're a Zebra product, and they're about the same size. You can see them in comparison to the Datalogic product. We We're not a dealer for them, but we do have quite a few reconditioned units in stock, and they meet a real good price point as well. The Dr. Pepper can obviously is there to show you relative size, so you can get an idea of how large these are, how small they are compared to something you're familiar with. The two things that we require, obviously, if you're going to use a barcode system, is that you have your locations barcoded, your warehouse locations barcoded, and then obviously your SKUs need to be barcoded. And with those two things barcoded, then you can receive items, you can put things away, you can do counting, you can count by SKU, you can count by location, you can then when you go to pick, you know exactly where to go to pick things, et cetera, et cetera. We do have some software that allows you, that helps you label those if they're not already labeled. What you're looking at, the desktop that you're looking at, is actually the desktop of an RF server. And so over here on the left, we have a couple of barcode printing programs that we provide at no charge to our customers for printing barcode labels. It prints to a Zebra, ZPL, or an EPL printer, and allows you to print the barcodes for your locations if you don't have them already printed. I'm sorry. This is a bird's eye view of a suggestion of what a warehouse kind of should be laid out. We have a nomenclature that we go by for laying out your warehouse in a logical fashion. So you have your aisles, and then you have your shelves. This is a bird's eye view looking down on the top of your shelves, and you'd have racks or shelving that bolts together. And so this would be aisle, for example, A1, and then you have B1 and B2, C1 and C2, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have rack 01, 02, 03, so on and so forth. And the best practices say that you should do a statistical review of your how well your product sells, and then you should have your fast-moving products in these first shelves up here so that you can pick and pack, bing, bing, and get them out the door quickly. So it may not be something that's convenient to do manually with paper, but when you have a system such as ours, then you can do things like that real quick and real easily. So if you walk down the aisle now and looked at one of the racks, this is what it would look like from the front. That other one was a bird's eye view. This is an aisle view of what a rack would look like. So if you have a rack, and then you have the shelves, and then you actually have the boxes or bins on the shelf. One example is that this is on aisle D1. It's the 6th rack, and this happens to be the 2nd shelf. You can label from the top down or the bottom up. In this case, we did from the bottom up. So you have the shelf, and then you have the actual bin. So using this nomenclature, you can hire somebody in the morning, and they can start picking orders and be very familiar with your warehouse very quickly. Going to aisle D1, the 6th rack, the 2nd shelf, the 3rd bin, they're able to pick things real quickly. Then when they pull it out, they scan it with our barcode handheld terminal, and it confirms whether they have the right item or not. So it cuts way down on your mispicks, and then it prompts you where to go logically to the next location. Our system allows you to pick multiple orders at one time, so you can pick up to 50 orders, for example, if you want. This is an example of one of our customers here in the Phoenix area and how they did it. They printed their shelf labels and put them on a magnetic strip, and the magnet adheres to the front of the iron shelving, for example, and then they can move things left or right. They can take one out, they can add one, they can slide them over and create a whole new location if they want, and it doesn't leave any gummy label residue on the shelf. And so that's kind of how we recommend that be done. We can give suppliers of all the raw material that you might need in order to do something like that. The other thing is, as I mentioned, you can pick multiple items at the same time. So that same customer whose labeling I'm showing you created this picking cart, and they happen to do air conditioning and clean room supplies. And so they have a cart that looks like this. They can pick 12 orders at a single time, and anything that's too large to go in, they place on top. So they would, for example, they would scan 12 orders, place the piece of paper in here, the packing slip essentially in there. Our system is based off the packing slip. A lot of people ask us, can you be paperless? Well, we find out that the very last thing that has to go in the box when it goes out the door is the packing slip. So when the customer receives it, they know what they got and what they didn't get. And so we've never been able to figure out how to avoid that piece of paper. So it just postpones the printing of the paper. And so we go ahead and introduce it at the step up front and use it to key off of in order to know which orders can be picked, and it also gives the picker an opportunity to kind of pre-screen the order. For example, they might have 15 minutes left before they have to go to lunch or before they check out, and an order with 150 items on it is too big, but they can pick up a piece of paper and look on it and say, I can handle a 25-piece order in the next 10 minutes, so I'll pick that right now. And they'll go ahead and pick that, and then their 10 minutes is up, and they can clock out and go to lunch or go home for the day or whatever. So it works out in that way, pre-screening as well. Anyway, so this is an example of a cart and what that looks like. Any questions so far?
No, it's pretty straightforward.
Okay. All right. So the other thing that we do is we give the employees a badge, and each employee is given a badge with what we call an E number, an employee number on it. And this is how we track the employees. It also kind of bumps up the professionality of the warehouse a little bit by having everybody have an ID badge, and you know who they are, and you can identify who's done what when. So they would come in and they have a badge that's on a nail somewhere or something on the manager's desk, and when they come in, they check in, and then they would scan this barcode when they start using the scanner, and then we can know who is doing what. We can track productivity and that kind of stuff. I just went down to Office Depot or Office Max, and I bought a badge producing software. It was $50 or something like that, and then I bought some lanyards and some badge covers and did it very inexpensively. Some of our customers actually use a business card. They just flip it over and have the employee sign it. When you buy a system from us, we send out some barcodes that you can use for this as well, if you need that. So if I had a handheld in my hand and started it up, you wouldn't be able to see it. So we have a little emulator here that we run that shows you what this would look like if you held the scanner in your hand. Obviously, the screen would be something like that, a rectangle, as I showed you in the earlier pictures. So you log in. This happens to be just a demo software I have here, demo license running. This is the screen that they're presented with. And so they would go to their employee ID and they would scan their badge. At this point, I'm going to go ahead and scan mine. It puts the number in there, or they can key it in by hand if they'd like, and then they have a password. So I've alluded to the RF server a couple times. Let me show you what the login looks like. So this is what runs on the RF server for managing our system. It can be accessed from any computer on your intranet by just typing in the IP address of the RF server, and then this pops up, and you log in. You obviously wouldn't want to give this login to all of the, in someone who's not on a managerial level. But at this point, there's an overview here. You can look up an order. I'll show you that in a minute. You can do receiving, so you can receive purchase orders. You can run reports. We have employee pick report, verify report, a transaction report. This is the accumulated move adds and changes that I've mentioned to you earlier, that you can look at this, and this shows you all the events that have occurred chronologically. You can go to counts, bins that need counting. You can essentially look at what's called a discrepancy. The manager can come here. And then this is where you add your employees. As you see, we have 3 employees, Roger Ramjet, Melinda Blake, and Gordon Jennings. If I click on edit, you see that this is where we put in the employee ID, put in their password, first and last name. When the employee gets terminated, you would come here and enter a termination date, and then obviously they wouldn't be able to use the scanners any longer. And then you can make an employee a manager or a non-manager. In my case, I'm a manager, so I will have an extra little button on my scanner when it comes up that I'll point out here in a minute. So because I'm a manager. So when I log in here, that password that I put in when I create, when you go back here, and if you want to create a new employee, you add an employee, and then you'd enter their e-number and their name, first and last name, and make them a manager or not a manager, and then you save it, and then they're able to log in. So in this particular case, you give them a password as well. I'm going to enter my password, and then I sign in. When I sign in, these are the functionality that you can do on the scanner. As I mentioned, because I'm a manager, we have this reconciliation button, and I can click that, and it shows any reconciliations that need to be taken care of. Currently, there aren't any. I'll create one in a minute and show you how that works. But we're able to pick orders, we're able to verify orders, and you can manage items right from here. Manage items is a pretty powerful program, part of our program. So let me start with there, and I'll show you how that works. So if we go and we look at our SKUBANA dashboard, you see that we have some master SKUs, some test SKUs, some SKUs in here that we've entered for testing purposes. One is called test SKU 1, and you see that there's this is the amount that's on hand, the number that's allocated, and the what's in transition and available for sale. So you take 199, and you subtract the 6, and that means that there's 183 available for sale. So if I highlight that item on the right here, you can see more detail about that item. And over here on the right, you can see all of the locations that are now registered in SKUBANA where this particular SKU might be. So let's go back to the scanner here, and I'm going to go ahead and scan the same SKU, test SKU 1, and it will then pull up and show me the same information that's shown on the dashboard over here. So we actually have the test SKU 1 here. It shows all of the locations, the number that are available in each of the locations. And that all comes up on here. It shows all the different locations and the quantity that are in each one of those locations. So what you can do with manage items is I can actually change the quantities in those locations. I can add a bin if I want. So as you can see that there's multiple bins where this can reside. I can actually print labels for this. So if we go back to that picture that we had earlier, the labels here on the right are called SKU labels. I can actually print these from the scanner if I have a printer attached to the RF server properly. Then what I can do is I just, let me go back here. So if we have a Zebra ZPL or EPL, I think EPL is the more common, attached to the RF server, I can enter a barcode or SKU ID there, and I can print the barcodes right from the scanner. So for example, in receiving, if you have some items that come in and don't have labels on them, you can go in here and print the labels. So I can click this and then say print 20, and it will print 20 to to the appointed printer. Now, where is that designated? Well, if you go back in here under settings, the printer that it's going to print to is designated here. So if I click on change, it searches through all of the Windows available printers, and I can select which printer I want and save it. In this particular case, it's the PTR02, which happens to be a wireless portable printer that we also support that can be, you can put over your shoulder and carry around the warehouse. So let me show you a picture of that. So it happens to be the QLN 320 printer that can attach to your belt, or some of them come with a wrist strap, and you can hold it over your shoulder. So this can be carried around the warehouse, and you can print and say, I want 20 of these, and it'll print out on this little printer. Or if you have a tethered printer, you can print to it. Again, as I showed you earlier, it can be a desktop printer that's attached through USB port or something like that, or it can be a network printer that's hooked up through the network, shared through the network. All right, so let me go ahead and look at that. You'll notice that it says the quantity on hand is 188. So if we go back here and look at this, the quantity on hand is says 189 here. That's because we put 2 warehouses in here for test purposes, and another warehouse that we have has a quantity of 1 in it. And that's why this number is off, because we actually have 2 warehouses in this panel that we use for testing purposes. But let me show you how this is pretty powerful. If I want to modify, if I want to do a cycle count, or change the quantity in A2030403, I can go over here and I look at A20304. It has available 4. The reason it has available 4, if I hover over it, is you'll notice that there's actually 10 on hand in the bin, but 6 of them are allocated in an order that's come through. So if I come over here to allocated and I look at that allocated, it shows me that here are the orders, and all of the ones that are allocated, they are removed from this location. That's why the number's off, because the allocated for an order. But if I look at A6010101, I come back over here, A60101, there's 10 here, and that coincides with what shows on the scanner. Well, let's say that I walk over and I look at that, and it turns out that there's only 8 there. I can edit that, and I can adjust, I can add, or I can remove, and then it in turn will, if I adjust, it says I'm going to adjust to, let's say, 8, change that to 8, and I click OK. Then what happens is it says that here's the bin, the old quantity was 10, the new quantity is 8. So what will happen is this will ripple through, and the quantity here will go down by 2, and then the quantity on hand will actually go down by 2. So if I click OK, we're now doing the API calls necessary to communicate to SKUBANA. And if I refresh the screen, you notice that the 189 now changed to 187. And if I look at that particular item, that A60101 changed from 10 to 8. So we actually modified the quantity, pushed it up to the SKUBANA, through the SKUBANA API, and your dashboard is now updated to reflect the true physical count, so that your virtual count here that you're selling on the internet is now in sync or jives with what's physically in your warehouse. And that's our goal, is to make sure that the physical count coincides with the virtual count, which is up on the web. Any questions so far? None?
All good.
Okay. All right. So the manage items allows you to do quite a bit. I can move items from one bin to another just by clicking on this. So if I'm out in the warehouse, I would walk to a location and say, hey, I'm going to move these. It happens to be that I'm going to move, let's say I'm going to move from A1002 03, 04. I'm going to move it to the location where I just A60101. And so what I would do is I would walk to the location, aisle A1, 02, 03, and I walk to that location and I scan it. So the barcode that's on the shelf, I would scan it. In this particular case, I don't have it, so I'm going to have to type it in. So A6-010101, and I click OK, and it says, okay, how many are you going to take? I'm going to take 2 of them, and I click OK, and it says, what destination are you going to? I want to go to A1-02-03-03-04, and I click OK, and it says, here's a confirmation. You're going to go from this quantity, this location to this one, a quantity of 2. When I click O2, OK, you notice that 2 were now moved, and it changed from, I actually did that backwards, but it moved 2 from here, and it moved the 2 to this location. So that's how you transfer or move around the warehouse. When you're ready to go back to the other menu, you just hit this exit button here, and it moves you back. And I'm back to the main menu. Let's see, the next one. We actually have 2 ways of doing a count in the warehouse now. We've just recently come out with the second one, the bin count. Cycle count is a program that was written for one of our customers with their specification, and the way they wanted it was to do a blind count. So you walk up to a bin, for example, and you scan the bin ID, and it now tells you that there are 2 SKUs in this bin. And so I click OK, and it asks me, okay, which SKU do you actually want to count? So I have to select which one I want to count. And this is a blind count. So I select that one, and I say, let's say that there's 12 in there. I count 12, and it says type and hit enter. So I hit enter, and it says, wait, there's a discrepancy of 2. I can report it to the manager, or I can recount. So I'm going to click report to the manager, and now a discrepancy has come up, and now the manager will be alerted about it. So I'm going to go back here, and as a manager, I have reconciliations here. When I click on this, it now shows up that there's a discrepancy or a reconciliation that needs to be done at this location. When I click on that location, it says, here's the date and the time, and the current quantity says 10, and Gordon went and counted 12. So what do I want to do? Do I want to use the 12, or do I want to keep the 10? So as a manager, I could walk to that location and count the number of SKUs that are in that location, and then I would make a determination that, Gordon made an error and there's really only 10 there, so I'm going to keep the 10. And now the quantity was updated appropriately, and the reconciliation has now gone away. So I don't have any reconciliation. So that would be something that the manager could check during the day. So that's how cycle count works. Cycle count was designed, again, to be a blind count, and that's the way the customer wanted it. So for another customer, we created what's called bin count. And so then I walk up to that same bin, for example, and I scan it, and it shows me the 2 SKUs that are in there. And what I would do is I would simply randomly just start counting the SKUs, and then when I'm done, it will compare the number that I scanned to the number that are there, and I can then make the adjustment, or I can refer it to the manager for reconciliation. So that was another way of doing a warehouse count that another one of our SKUBANA customers preferred. They found that more useful than the bin count. So Keith, you guys were more interested in picking and verification, right?
Yeah, I mean, all of this would change our operations pretty significantly. I think it's good stuff. So yeah, it kind of comes down to implementation and cost. Okay,
so the way that our system works is we kind of go by what we call a reverse pyramid, and that is that you have a lot of pickers out picking orders, and I don't know how big your operation is, but we have a customer here in the Phoenix area that does about 6,000 orders a day, depending on the season. And so they have a lot of pickers out there picking orders, and then they feed those orders into packers, people that take them off the cart and put them in the boxes, getting them ready for shipping. And then once they're done, they actually feed them over to a fewer number of shippers. When you think about it, the shipping station is probably most expensive station. It's got a PC, and it's got a tethered scanner, and it's got a scale on it, and might have some other things there as well. And so you minimize the cost by having the shippers minimized. And so the idea is that our system, we do a picking to pick the cart. So we pick and we sort at the same time, and then those are sent over to people that do the packing. So let me show you the pick order first. So I'll scan an order, and it pulls up that order. Now, one of the things that one of our customers requested was, hey, sometimes we make a mistake and we pick the same order twice. So we want you to tell us if the order's already been picked, so we don't waste all that energy in picking a second order and then finding out it's already been shipped when it gets to the shipping station. Then we have to reverse all the labor we put into it. So we pop up a message that says in red, already picked, and I can click info on this. And it shows that Gordon Jennings picked this on December 22nd. Well, yeah, I use this for my demo. So I'm going to pick it again. So I'm going to repick the order. And so it adds it here to my list of things that I'm going to pick. So I'm going to scan the next one, and it's going to retrieve that. Now it's telling me which box to put it in as it's doing that. So the first order goes into the first box, and the second order obviously goes into the second box. So let me look at the info on this, and I'm going to repick that as well. So in the interest of time, I'm just going to do these two orders. But I could do any number of orders. I could do 20 or 30 or 40 or 50. How many orders you can handle, and it's usually dependent on the picking cart. So here's some of the carts. This one, as I said before, this can pick 12 orders at one time. This happens to be another inexpensive cart that one of our customers made. They do 20 orders at one time. We have another customer that made this one where they can do 25 orders. They just got a bread rack on wheels and place these plastic bins in there, and they can go around the warehouse and pick 25 orders at one time, pick and sort. And the idea is that you pick them and then you wheel it over to where the verifier is, or the packer, and then they can go grab another cart, and off they go picking more orders while the packer gets them ready for shipping. All right, so let me go ahead and as soon as I've scanned the number of orders I want to work with, I hit start picking. And now what this does is it sorts all the items on all of the orders and it puts them by warehouse locations. So the idea would be that if you have your warehouse laid out like we showed before, then you would it sorts them by warehouse location. So it sorts this aisle first, then it goes down here, and so on and so forth. So no matter how many orders you make one orderly trip through the warehouse, and all orders are picked and sorted during that one trip. And so it's sending us now to the first location, A1, A2, O3, O2, O3, and I walk there and I scan it. Now, the first one happens to be test SKU2, so I walk to that location. I can either scan the SKU, test SKU2, or I can scan the barcode that's associated with that. So when I scan it, it says, okay, put in box, and you scan the box. And so the idea would be that, we're confirming that the box that they're putting it in, and I don't know if you noticed, but right here on the very front of each one of these is a barcode that says this happens to be the proper one. So I scan the box, and it happens to be a barcode that's just a BX1. So I'm going to scan that. I scan it, and now you can see that box one is grayed out, so that's been fulfilled. But there happens to be the same SKU is on a different order that needs to be put in box 2. And so I'm going to scan that SKU 2 as well. I'm going to scan it, put in box 2. So I scan box 2, I scan it again, put it in box 2. I scan it again for the third time, put it in box 2, and now it moved on to the second item, which happens to be a test SKU 1. So I walk to the new location, and I scan it, and it tells me to put that in box 1. So I scan the box to confirm. I'm going to scan it again, and I put it in the same box, and now it sends me to the last item that I'm going to pick is test SKU 3. Now watch what happens if I scan the wrong barcode. Let's say I pull the wrong item out of the box and I scan it. It tells me SKU not found. And so I would go, and you couldn't hear it, but there's also an audible tone that is emitted from the scanners to get their attention if they're not looking at the screen. But they can't go on until they click OK here. And so they would put the item back because it's either misfiled in the wrong bin or they've picked the wrong item if you're sharing the bin with multiple SKUs. And so now I scan the right one, and it says put that in box 1. So I scan it, and now I'm finished. Again, there's an audible tone that a little tune that plays telling you that you're finished. And now the cart with the 3 orders that are picked would now get wheeled over to what we call the verification stage or the packing stage. And then that particular person would go off and get another cart and start picking more orders. So the person at the packing station uses what we call verify order. And when I click verify order, I scan the order number, and it happens to bring up a notice that says this has already been verified. Yeah, I did this a while back in another demo. So I'm going to go ahead and re-verify it. And it shows me the SKUs that are on the order and how many I verified. So far, I haven't verified any. Now, what I can do here is I can pull the SKUs out of the box, the pick box, at random and put them in the shipping box. So at this stage, what happens typically is the packer doesn't really know what size box to use until they can see all the items that are accumulated. So once the items are accumulated on the cart, they can say, hey, I need a 4x4x4, 6x6x8, whatever. They pull the appropriate box down, tape it open, and now they scan the packing slip, put that in the box, and then as they move the items one by one from the picking cart or the picking box into the shipping box, they scan them. And so, this might be something, Keith, that you want to do. Some of our customers use both the picking part to make sure the orders are picked accurately. Others forego the scanning at the picking, and they only use our verify process at the verify step to verify that the orders are accurate. And some of them use both. And so it really depends on how you want to, your business policies and how you want to handle it. But we give you the tools in order to make sure your orders are accurate, and then you can implement them as you see fit. So as I pull the items off of the cart, I scan them at random. I scan that one, and now you can see that it's grayed out. If I scan it again, test SKU 2, it'll tell me, hey, you picked too many of those. That's not supposed to go in there. So rather than put that in the box and create a picking error and send the customer too many that they haven't paid for, I've just saved the company money on I probably wouldn't have heard from the customer if they got 2 and they ordered and paid for 1. So it helps in that regard. So I'm going to scan test SKU 1, and I've scanned one of those. Now I'm going to scan another one. And now what I have left is test SKU 3, so I scan that one. And now the order's been verified and complete, and I can go ahead and box it up and get it ready for the shipping portion of it. We don't have shipping that we have on the scanner, but we recently developed with SKUBANA a shipping station where you can actually have a PC there with a scale on it and a barcode printer. And what you can do is you can use our software that runs on that station. You can put the box on the scale. It will, when you scan the order, it will read the scale. It will the weight from the scale, then it'll communicate with SKUBANA, and SKUBANA will figure out the best way to ship it if you're using multiple shipping services, and then it will send back to us the information needed to print the appropriate label, the shipping label. So then we'll print the label on a barcode printer, and then you could peel that off and attach it to the box, and then put it in the appropriate the appropriate pile, whether it's UPS or FedEx or U.S. Postal Service. All right, so I've showed you pick orders, verify orders, manage items, cycle count, bin count. The only other one that I haven't showed you is receive a purchase order. So when I receive a purchase order, obviously it has to be a valid purchase order. And the only one that I have is purchase order 1001. So I pull out the packing slip, key it in, or I can scan if there's a barcode on the packing slip when a purchase order arrives. And now that I put that in there, it shows all of the SKUs that were on that purchase order and what has already been received and what is still outstanding. Obviously, the stuff that's been received is in gray. The items that are still outstanding are not grayed out. And so I'm expecting 17 of test SKU3 and 2 of test SKU2. And so what I would do is I would then open up the box. It's already opened, and I would scan the items that are in the box. And so I would scan test SKU3. Let me scan that. It then brings up a location. Where do I want to put that? And so you would determine where you want to put it. We can have what's called cross dock or dock stations, where you can put them temporarily, and then you can use the transfer feature and manage item to transfer them from the dock into the appropriate location. But at this particular time, we need to know where you're going to locate this. And if I want to go ahead and scan more, I can go ahead and keep scanning. So I'm going to scan 3 again, and you'll notice that as I scan them, the count here increments. So I've scanned 3 of those, and now when I'm done with, I continue to scan all that I've received. I determine where I want to put those, and these are the locations that are associated with that SKU that are valid for me to where I want to put them. So I can now physically take them to one of those locations, and if I scan the location where I want to put them in, then it would increment the quantity and go ahead and push that information back to SKUBANA. And so I continue in that regard. And when I'm ready to assign a location to it, I would scan the location. So in this particular case, let's say I want to go to dock-4, which happens to be a location on the dock, dock-04. And it puts them in that location. So you can see that I've received 3 of those, and now I'm ready to receive the others, test SKU2, and so on and so forth. So if I continue in that fashion, I can click on view what was received. I can return to the purchase order. And then when I'm done, I click done receiving, and it creates a record inside our RF server, what we call the wireless order fulfillment system in here. It creates a record. So now here's the idea. When you receive something, 2 things have to happen. Number 1 is the physical quantity needs to be taken from the dock to its storage location. So that needs to happen. The other thing that has to happen is the invoice, or the invoice you got for the purchase order, needs to go up to your receiving manager, and the receiving manager has to receive them, and that's added into SKUBANA, and then the invoice is paid for whatever was received. So if this portion right here was designed for the second or the latter part. So I'm going to have to sign in again because it timed out. If I go to receiving, you see that purchase order 1001 has 3 receiving sessions. So I've demoed this 3 times in 3 different demos. And if I view the sessions, you can see that today, this is what happened, and on December 1st, this is what happened, and on November 30th, this is what happened. So I would click on the particular, I would select it, and then I would say View Received Selected, and you can see that today I received 3 of these, and I didn't receive, excuse me, anything of the others. So what I do here, sometimes you receive items and they happen to be damaged, and so we made this received field editable, so you can change, let's say 2 of these are damaged, I can change the 3 to 1, and then I can go ahead and commit and update stock. So this would be the step that the purchasing department or the purchasing manager does in order to receive the item and then go ahead and pay the vendor for what has been received. I'm not going to go ahead and commit those because I use that purchase order in all my demos, and I don't want it to be depleted. So that kind of shows you the receiving process that goes through and is currently in use with our SKUBANA customers. So that kind of completes the demo. Does anyone have any follow-up questions or anything that they have a question about?
No, thanks for your time and walking through that and showing how it all works. I think, from our perspective, we're at an interesting kind of juncture right now in our business where if we continue down the current path, we would implement something like this. The other option is go somewhere else that already has something like this in place. So, in making that decision, like I said, I think this would be super beneficial to what we're doing, increased accuracy, better picking, all that. My biggest concern or question would be, what the cost and then timeline to implement something like this would be.
Okay, well, let me go over that real quick for you. If you go to our website, if you go to Barcoders, www.barcoders.com, and then click on, type that in right. Yeah, something's thumbs up with our internet here. Huh. Let me stop it and try again. Oh, there it is. Okay, there it is. Okay, and you click on SKUBANA. The way we structured it is obviously the number of access points is dependent on the size of the warehouse, and so we kind of made a generic one here depending on how big your warehouse is. How big is yours, Keith?
It's growing, but we're occupying right now probably about 6,000 square feet.
Okay. All right. So probably our first level would work for that. It's 1650 initially, and what that gets you is the RF server and 1 access point and the configuration of that all ready to go. So what we do is we work with your IT team and we get an IP address and we program all that, and it becomes plug and play. So when you get it, the toughest thing you have to do is mount the access point. And so what the access point does is it just goes up in your ceiling in the center part of your warehouse with the antennas pointing down, and then you run a Cat5 wire from that to a little box that looks like a pack of cigarettes, about the same size as a pack of cigarettes. And it plugs into the power, and then it plugs into your internet and also plugs into that Cat5 that you run up to your access point. So it produces power and data and combines them into that one Cat5 or Cat6 that goes up to your access point. And that's the toughest thing you have to do. And everything else comes pre-configured. We've even pre-configured that to match the IP schema of your network. As I say, we get with your IT people and get that, or if you don't have an IT staff, we can remote in and get that information just by doing a couple queries on a computer that's on the network. And so that's the first step. So the upfront hardware cost would be about $1,650, and as I say, that gets you 1 access point and the RF server and the configuration time that goes into that, and the setup time and everything. And then you need to determine the scanner that you want, the model that you want, and the number of them. So once you have the wireless structure in place, you can do 1 scanner or you can do 15 scanners. So it really depends on how many how many scanners you want to have operating at the same time. So let's say you go with 2 of them. So you determine which scanner you want to go with. We have the Scorpio, the one that's pictured here, or we have several other selections you can pick from. Reconditioned, we can get the DataLogic product new if you want to spend that. But probably our best and our recommended one is this Motorola MC32N. The scanners this is the current price that we have up on there. So you get a scanner and a charger. It comes with a battery. And so on top of the 1650, you'd have one scanner of 1,075. So that's about, $2,700 to get you going with one scanner and the RF server and one access point. So then we have the software is $195 per month, and that includes your first license. So the setup and the configuration and everything is $195 per month, and that gets you the ongoing account. You get web updates, you get support with that, and if there's any bugs that need to be fixed, you report them and we get to them as quick as we can. Then if you want to add a second license, this is essentially a software use license. It's $35 per month per user. So if you wanted to go with 2 users, then it would be $195 plus $35 would be $230 per month. And like I say, that gets you the use of the software and the support and updates and bug fixes and everything that goes along with that. So basically, let's say for one user, it would be, what I say, $2,600, $2,700 up front, and then $195 per month from then on in order to use the software.
Mm-hmm. And what about a timeline? I mean, obviously labeling everything and setting up the bins correctly. Plus, all of our items are not barcoded. We'd have to barcode everything. Like, what do you think? 3 months?
Yeah, it depends on the number of SKUs you have. One of our biggest customers is SKUBANA.com, and they're here in the Phoenix area. So they set up what they call a printing cart, which we can supply as well. That looks something like this. They set up a printing cart, and this was an audio visual cart with 3 shelves. On the bottom is a car battery that we put in a container, and then we have an inverter that inverts the 12 volts and makes 115 volts, and then there's a power supply that everything plugs into. So they have a laptop, and they have a printer, and this laptop is connected back wirelessly, and they were able to go around and scan and print that way. And so they hired a couple of high school kids. They have probably about a 35,000, 40,000 square foot warehouse. They didn't at the time, but they hired someone to just go around and start labeling everything. One of the advantages of the software we have is that this barcode maker file is a file that allows us to, you could print from a file. So if you create a CSV file and you can put all your locations in there, and you can point to the file and it will open up the file and print one label for every line that's in there. So let me see if I have anything in the data file here. Yeah, so this is shelf locations, a TXT file that I created just as a demo. And it has, A1, O1, 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 and you can do this in an Excel spreadsheet and then export it if you want, or you can just, clip and cut and copy and paste here and then modify it. And then once that's all done, with this barcode maker from file, you point to the file and click print, and then what it does is it opens up that file and prints one label for every line that's in there. So this is what it would look like. You'd have a label printout from the printer. It would print out one label, and then you'd peel those off and put them on magnetic strip, and then put them on your locations. As far as your SKUs are concerned, they're a little easier. you just say, hey, I want to print 25 of this SKU, and it would print those barcodes for you. So the time it takes to do that is really an upfront investment that really comes back and rewards you for higher efficiency many times over for the next 10 years. So it's something that's worth doing because of the higher level of efficiency that you get. That again returns to you over and over and over again for the duration of your business. Yeah,
couldn't agree more. It's interesting. Cool. Thanks. So I think next steps is sit down and plotting out, what the next few months would look like, and how we would go about, setting this up if it were something we would move ahead with.
All right. Well, think it over and let me know if you have any questions. Send me an email and let me know, and we'll be happy to answer them and let us know how we can help.
Will do.
All right. Thanks, Keith.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, everybody.
Jeffrey. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.